All right, everybody. Thank you for coming out tonight. I am your supervisor, Manu Koenig, and I see a room full of passionate bikers and just people who love East Cliff in front of me. Walkers, yes, thank you. And this is a hybrid meeting tonight, so excuse me if I'm sitting down over here trying to control the slides, and we also have a number of people joining us via Zoom tonight. And as you can see, we're here to talk about East Cliff Parkway and some design options. East Cliff is probably one of the most beloved parts of our county, and I know draws a lot of strong emotions, mostly positive, but sometimes also there are frustrations. And what we're going to talk about tonight is any opportunities to improve the current design for traffic patterns here. Just want to introduce a few other people here in the room. I have the new analyst with my office, Jillian Ritter. She's helping us out. We also have my other analyst, Jamie Seahorn, is joining us online.
Hi, everyone.
There you go. You can see the folks online. And then also in the room, we have from the Department of Public Works, our Assistant Director of Transportation, Steve Wiesner. Thank you. Thank you. And Greg Martin, our Traffic Safety Engineer. All right. Without further ado, I'll jump into these slides. All right, so current conditions on East Cliff. First and foremost, it needs a paint job. Whatever striping is currently there has been wearing off, and we need to do something about it. Potentially just restripe the way it is, has been in the past, or upgrade it, or change it, I should say. Obviously, this path gets a ton of usage by all variety of folks, walkers, people with surfboards, which are almost their own class since they've got a large surfboard and take up a heck of a lot of room, people young, old, people, as well as people on bikes. Right now, the walkway is actually a mixed-use pathway, so it's meant to be used by both cyclists and pedestrians, and that's more or less how it's striped. Since taking office back in the beginning of 2021, though, I've constantly heard mostly anecdotal accounts of conflicts on the path. You know, I was walking my dog and a biker ran over my leash and I fell and I hurt my wrist. I tripped on the uneven paving that's out there, and hopefully you did notice some improvements on that this week. We had parks go out there and grind down those raised lips and are just trying to remove any tripping hazards that way. A lot of this stuff is anecdotal. We dug into the traffic accident reports and where CHP or the sheriff was actually called to the scene. And while there are certainly accidents along East Cliff, what we have recorded in the data is mostly car accidents, not so much these bike and pedestrian collisions or near misses. Those are mostly anecdotal, but we do know just from a lot of reports that they're a problem. And one of the things that's kind of adding some fuel to this fire is just the increased use of e-bikes. This is a picture actually of New Brighton Middle School, and you can see pretty much their entire bike cage is electric bikes. You know, for not surprising reasons that it just gives kids a lot more freedom if they're able to get around on an e-bike, and we all love the sense of power of having a little electric assist, and certainly kids are no exception to that. Some estimates say that 28% of all new bike sales are electric bikes. And as I said, we're seeing a particularly great adoption among youth and actually seniors as well. Correspondingly, we are seeing an increase in e-bike accidents here in the county. Just between 2023 and 2024, the 2 years we have full years of data for, saw a 178% increase in e-bike accidents, so going from 18 in 23 to 50 in 2024. Now, certainly some of that is, going back to just youth with more and more powerful bikes. I mean, CHP reported to me the other day, they found a 11-year-old driving a Class 3 e-bike into a fence, and, Class 3 e-bike goes 28 miles an hour. And technically, it's not even legal for anyone under 16 to drive. So there are certainly just awareness issues and just around for parents who are purchasing these electric bikes for their kids. And there's the potential for the state to have greater licensing requirements, et cetera, around this. But really what we're focused on here with this conversation is what the county can do, both for this facility, well, actually for really with respect to this particular facility. And of course, the most tragic case, we actually did see a death from an e-bike collision and a pedestrian along Opal Cliffs last year in the fall between an 82-year-old woman and an electric bicycle. And so obviously we want to avoid any more of those incidents. As I said, there's sort of limits to what the county can do with restricting e-bikes in general and with bike usage. We did actually ban e-bikes from using sidewalks last year. However, that does not apply to East Cliff because East Cliff is technically not a sidewalk. It is a mixed-use facility. That's how it was permitted from the Coastal Commission. That's how it's signed and striped, and that's obviously how it's used today. So that gets us to how it's used today. If you could see the striping on East Cliff, this is what it would look like. And you can see that while there is obviously the car lane and a bike lane within the street, separated by a curb from the walkway, well, on the walkway, there's the keep right striping on the paved section, and then there's the gravel section closest to the cliff. But what does keep right mean? Does it mean keep right just for bicyclists? Does it mean keep right for pedestrians? In theory, it's both. Should a bike, bikes can use the walkway, so should a bike going eastbound or north also keep right? Should there's just nothing here that really defines how bikes and pedestrians should use these facilities in awareness to one another. So in thinking about ways to improve this facility, we thought, well, the easiest thing would be to clearly demarcate a bike lane on the walkway. And then at least bikes would know where to go. Pedestrians would know they shouldn't really walk in that bike lane. However, we do have a pretty constrained space on the walkway, and particularly around areas like Jack's. It gets pretty narrow. And so trying to stripe a full bike lane in addition to having enough space for bikes, for pedestrians, begins to get to be a bit of a squeeze. Furthermore, with this, you still have bikes coming up behind pedestrians, and just that sort of element of surprise can lead to accidents. So another option we looked at was, well, you could just, if we were going to put a bike lane on the sidewalk, we could actually reverse the directions of the bike lanes. This is, if you look at the bike facility alone, this is sort of a more natural configuration. And also this way you have the bikes oncoming to pedestrians, and so they can at least see each other.
Aren't pedestrians going both directions?
Yes, in theory, pedestrians are still going both directions. Absolutely. Yeah. Either way. Sure. And either way, it's constrained. So that got us looking at other options, right, to deal with this element of constraint. If you look at Pacific Avenue, there is a contraflow lane going down it, and that's been in place since 2017. And overall, it's been pretty successful. That has allowed bikes to use the street in both ways, even though it's one way, sometimes north, sometimes south for cars. We were also looked abroad, and in fact, our assistant director Wiesner was just in the Netherlands and kind of learned how they combine traffic modes in different places. And really, when you start to get speeds of 30 kilometers an hour or less, which is basically 20 miles per hour or less, they begin to look at mixing bikes and cars. However, that one major thing they do differently on those streets is treat the cars as guests on a bike facility. And so what you see there on that street, or on that street sign, is basically cars, your guests. And as you can see in both of these pictures, the cars are respectfully traveling behind the bikes and going at their speed. So that's the community norm that's set, and that's something we were kind of thinking about as we thought how we could look at improving East Cliff. And so if we put, this would be the natural configuration if we just put a contraflow lane in on East Cliff and put all the bikes into the street and made the walkway for pedestrians only. We also looked at reducing the speed limit to 20 miles an hour. Right now it's 25. We can certainly do we can certainly reduce the speed limit by 5 miles an hour. It's a minimal change. So this provides some solutions. It also provides some additional complexities, like the fact that there's actually a lot of parking on the inland side of East Cliff. And so you would now have people going over the oncoming bike lane in order to park. It also raised concerns about all the intersections from the avenues, right? We've got 34th, 35th, 36th, 37th, Manzanita, 38th, all coming into East Cliff. And so when they're coming up to the intersection, it might be harder to see oncoming cyclists closer to the vehicles. So the final option we looked at was actually just switching the current direction of the bike lane for westbound traffic, and basically moving the eastbound traffic, or going up in this diagram, into the travel lane with cars. Those would be sharrows, still reducing the speed limit. And in many ways, this works just like the facility does today, but just with the bikes shifted one bit over into the street. And then again, that frees up the walkway for pedestrians. So we put this out in a survey within a newsletter to as many people as we could. We wanted to see if there was any difference between the residents who live close to the facility and presumably use it more often, or everyone else that we could reach via email. I should say we basically, to get these email addresses, we went to the voter registrar. That's pretty much the largest public database of emails we have. And it started by just selecting the geographic area. I think we looked at Bromer and 26 as sort of north and western boundaries. And so looked at a pretty large area for folks who live close by East Cliff. That was the 2,400 email addresses we came up with and reached out to first. And then after we got results from that, reached out to pretty much every email address we have for the first district, as well as anyone who's signed up for the first district newsletter and receives regular updates. From there, it was also, we made a public survey link at that point, so anyone who had the link could take the survey, and it was further distributed on social media, not only Facebook and Instagram, but also sites like Nextdoor and Reddit. And also we saw it picked up by other groups like Bike Santa Cruz County, who just shared it more widely with their audience. And interestingly, the results did not change much between the first 2,400 folks that received it and then the larger groups. And so that kind of tells you that you're getting close to some statistically accurate data, because the more people answering is not changing your results. So what were those results? Well, we actually did see a strong preference for separating bikes and pedestrians. This was forced choice. People could only choose one of the 5 options. And the 2 that scored the best were option E, which separates bikes and pedestrians and has the contraflow lane, and option D, which has sort of a more traditional contraflow lane on the inland side. Then right in the middle was refreshing the current paint design, and then finishing last with the 2 options of adding a bike lane on the sidewalk. So we had close to almost 60%, 58.6% of respondents preferred one of the options where we separated bikes and pedestrians completely. And as you can see, option E was close to twice as much at high rating as the second most preferred option, D. And so we took a closer look at that. And so now we'll walk through these are the actual design schematics of what changing the streetscape would look like. And I guess I can talk through it quickly, and then if our public works folks have anything they want to add, they can. Really, we're trying to keep this striping change pretty minimal. We don't want to add a lot of clutter out there. And so that was one of the pieces of feedback we received. We would, as you can see, just change the direction of the existing bike lane, stripe it green, and particularly around the intersections and around the pullouts, so that it's very clear that that is a bike lane right there. And we put the sharrows in the street. There would be walk bike striping along the sidewalk. And right now there is a sign that says share the path for bikes and pedestrians right when you come to the entrance at 32nd Avenue and Pleasure Point Drive there. That's the intersection we're seeing here. And we would change that to say that bikes may, to put a sign that says bikes may use the full lane. And again, it would say walk bike on the sidewalk.
Like, get out there, disorient us.
Sure.
Pathways and the roads.
Sure. So Pleasure Point Market is right here. Here comes 32nd, Pleasure Point Drive. So this is really the start of the parkway, East Cliff Drive Parkway. Right now there's a sign here, as I said, that says bikes and pedestrians share the walkway. We switch that to say bikes may use full lane, referring to this travel lane here. And then, yeah, as I said, you can see the green striping for oncoming bikes.
Counterflow lane.
The contraflow lane.
Contraflow.
Yeah. Actually, I think the most, another notable thing is that this is actually would be a double yellow line to make it very clear that cars should not cross that line. We're all, occasionally cross a white line, but we know very well never cross a double yellow line. And so that would really make sure that cars, as they're looking at the view, do not cross into oncoming bike traffic.
Will there be any bumps installed there similar to by the boardwalk to help that installation?
Between, you're talking about like at the boardwalk, there's like a raised sort of pillow here.
Right.
Yeah, it's subtle, just enough.
Yeah, and so no, not we not in this design, and the reason we haven't proposed those, and again, Public Works can jump in here if they want to correct me, but one is, if we want to give bikes more flexibility in using the facility than less. And so because you have bikes over here, if a car is being rude and speeds up behind them and tries to pass them, we do want to give them the ability to, maybe swerve into the oncoming, if there's no oncoming bikes, have a little more flexibility to use that space.
Yeah, I'm just thinking the subtle 3 or 4 inch height thing.
Totally. It would be, but still, it would be pretty hard to, easily go over that as a cyclist. I mean, the other thing is just a space constraint. I don't know what the actual width of those pillows is, but I think it's wider than we actually have here. And the same thing kind of applies to the idea of putting some kind of stanchion or post there. We actually got feedback from the Bicycle Advisory Committee to try to not put additional stuff in the roadway because it could become, just more complex to navigate, especially for, larger family bikes or, trikes or anything like that. So really most of the striping changes are then at intersections. So this intersection treatment at 36th Avenue, right? It's pretty much the same at 34th, 35th, 36th, 37th, Manzanita, and 38th. Those are all the places where an avenue comes into East Cliff. And so we're going to add this sign that except no right turn except bicycles. We make sure to clearly delineate the direction of the bike lane with the green paint at the intersection. Also add more sharrows at the intersection. And then again, put the dashed green striping in front of these curb cutouts or kind of pullouts to make sure people are not crossing over there. These were originally placed here at the end of the avenues to allow emergency vehicles to turn in and out. So like a fire truck, so that they had ample space to turn here. Of course, people use them to stop and look at the view and load surfboards, but really that's not a legal usage for them. And so that's the point of maybe really trying to add a little bit extra paint in these spots is to deter people from doing that.
How wide is the street there? It's not, you're not changing the curve at all.
No, we're obviously not moving the curve. It varies, right? I think this is our width here. Is that right? 11.5?
No, that's actually stationary.
Oh.
And it ranges from about 10 and a half feet to 12, but it varies a little bit, but it's notably narrow a couple spots.
Slow it down.
But that's right, that's it, then, I think one of the other goals is to try to keep really big, big gigantic four-wheel drive trucks that are just taking massive amounts of room, but that they keep falling it. So, yeah, but putting that second line, I think will help, right? So right now, there's just a single white line. So we'll take off the single white line and then put in the double yellow. So that'll effectively narrow it up another 6 inches.
Good.
The travel lane where the cars can sort of.
Well, I could tell you.
Sorry, just hold on 1 minute. Okay, first of all, Jamie, can you hear all right online? Did you hear Steve's comments all right?
We heard the majority of Steve's comments. Just to repeat, he said that the road width varies between 10 and a half to 12 feet. And there's some notably narrow sections. And if we could mic him up if he's going to talk.
Yeah, we'll
Thanks.
send you a mic just in case you get, so just, we do have these mics to make sure that the folks online can hear. And it won't, just so you're reminded for those folks in the audience, we do have some wonderful folks joining us online. So do speak into the mic when you have a comment so that they can follow along. You won't hear any feedback so much in the room itself. It's transmitting to the computer. Actually, we're almost done with the slideshow here. You can see again, just kind of, this is not an intersection, but at a pullout that we'd add additional striping there to make sure it's clear, the direction of flow. And then probably the trickiest part is where 41st comes into East Cliff at the hook. We would add this sign that says westbound bikes must cross, because they're of course coming this direction up 41st and then would have to cross over. And then for bikes going eastbound, they would basically switch over, and we would probably put a flipped bike sign here. And we're looking at, maybe additional signage, caution, bicycle and pedestrian crossing at intersection. And the additional walk bike striping on the sidewalk here. Couple of common questions we've got. Can you add speed bumps? In general, that's definitely a viable idea in some places. So the answer is yes and no. One common suggestion was to add like a raised speed table at all of the crosswalks. And it would be possible kind of as a, at the entrance there at 32nd and Pleasure Point Drive. But other crosswalks have actually already had the curb lowered, and that was accomplished by raising the whole street. And so we can't actually add a speed table there, because then you would create a further height differential between the crosswalk and the sidewalk. And I don't think that would meet standards. We could certainly look at other speed bumps, although speed bumps do add a noise factor as people go over them. And there is a process that involves the residents ultimately approving those so that we're not keeping people up at all hours of the night and with the sound of people going over speed bumps. Another common question is, what about my 5-year-olds? Where are they going to ride? Are we really kicking them off of the sidewalk? And short answer is no one's going to ticket your 5-year-old. As you guys probably know who use the facility, there's not a whole lot of ticketing going on for these kinds of things in general. We have a pretty limited CHP and sheriff resources. And so often if they're responding to traffic accidents or incidents, it's because of a call for service. They're rarely, if ever, sort of staking out East Cliff. There's a lot going on, particularly in the summer times. And so largely what we're looking at is trying to establish a new community norm around the usage pattern. And an option that's going to be obeyed, particularly on heavy use days. So if you want to be the person shouting at a 5-year-old for using the sidewalk, I mean, you can, but I ideally, or really, they're not so much the problem we're trying to solve for. If we did pursue this, one thing we're thinking about is doing just another survey that compares this option directly to the existing striping and making sure that this in fact is a more popular option, option E. And so we're looking at putting that out within the next month or so. And if we still had community support, then with a few steps, we'd have to apply for a Coastal Commission immaterial amendment to our current use permit. We do that sometime in August, September timeframe. And then we'd probably try it out first before doing kind of an all-in implementation. So we can reduce costs in some places, particularly by using cheaper paint that would really last more for like a year than forever. And then if after a year's worth of implementation, or even probably by the time we got to summer 26, if everyone was still happy with it, we could do a more permanent implementation, including resurfacing East Cliff to make sure that any of the grinding marks from getting rid of the old striping was kind of gotten rid of and it all looked shiny and new. And of course, if any other suggestions came up that were practical to implement, but in that first period of implementation, the trial implementation, we could include those as well. That's all I got for you as far as presentation. I'm eager to hear your questions, comments, suggestions. And again, for those of you here in the live, we'll start with the live audience, then we'll go online. And if you are here live, please speak into the mic.
It looks good.
Great. Thank you.
Demon.
Okay. All right.
I think it's terrible.
Okay.
So I ride the path every day, at least once a day, usually twice. I've never seen an accident with a bicycle. Any place, I mean, I don't know how many people here are cyclists, but generally speaking, contraflow paths aren't incredibly popular. I think Santa Cruz works pretty well because it's a very wide street. And most people, when they're coming with, will either ride with the traffic, or if they're going the opposite direction, they will get in the contraflow, but it does cause some confusion. I sort of have to kind of chuckle at changing community norms. So we're going to train everybody to do the right thing in an area that's so heavily traveled by tourists. I doubt it. So we're going to have new people driving on there every single day who have absolutely no idea what the hell is going on. Where are all these bikes and where am I supposed to drive? The signage that currently exists, at least coming from Opal Cliffs and going down to East Cliff, is completely obliterated by stickers. So you can put up all the signs you want, but if you don't come along once a month and cut and take the stickers off, you might as well put a blank piece of metal up there, because you ride by the restrooms there on the sidewalk, the first place the bikes get on the sidewalk, and people start yelling at you right then and there. What are you doing on the sidewalk? Well, this is where I'm supposed to ride. And, then anyway, there's not been an educational process to show people where they should walk and where they should ride. And so, I mean, it sounds like it's already a done deal. So I'm probably just talking to hear myself talk. But yeah, I think.
Well, I'll interject. This is not a done deal.
Okay.
This is a completely discretionary project for the service of the community. I mean, like, believe me, some days I look at it and think, yeah, this could work. And some days I'm like, I don't know, too different.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not a done deal. This is absolutely up to what the community wants to do.
Okay.
And if we don't change it, fine. We had our option. That's the way it's going to be, right? And that's fine. I'm totally fine with that too. And I think our public works staff is fine with that too. So not a done deal. We're absolutely here to listen.
Okay. Well, that's encouraging. Just one example of a problem with this. So, I'm 81. My husband's turning 90 in August. We ride our bikes all the time. He's transitioning to a 3-wheel bicycle. And we've been practicing in our neighborhood. I live on 37th. And we were riding this morning down East Cliff. And there was a car stopped in the bike lane. So the guy driving in his 4-wheel drive truck could visit with his friend who's standing on the sidewalk with a surfboard. And so we had to go into the lane of traffic. And so first of all, I had to make sure I got in front and signaled properly that we were going into the lane of traffic. And then we were approaching 38th where we would turn left. So I signaled for that turn. And of course, the car behind me honked because he was in a hurry. And as soon as I turned on 38th, he punched it. So you do have a slight impatience issue because we ride with the tricycle like 11 miles an hour, 12 miles an hour max at this point. And, you know, that's just not satisfactory for the cars. So it's going to be fine for road bikers. They can just zoom along happily. But old people and, you know, young people and those 5-year-olds on the sidewalk, which I love seeing them riding because they're not riding an e-bike. They usually are accompanied by 1 or 2 parents. So you are still going to have those bikes. So in any event, I could all night. My suggestion, better signage for the way it is now. Okay, if people don't want to see an actual bike path painted where it now says keep right, because keep right is completely confusing for everybody. Put bike sharrows there wherever it says keep right, going in that direction, so that it really indicates that those bicycles are allowed to be there. Make sure that the signage is not just one little tiny sign by the bathrooms and one little tiny sign by the crosswalks. That it's a little bit more clear. Maybe there could even be a bike share by the crosswalk, you know, where you have to get onto the sidewalk. Start there and see if that helps. And maybe if you are going to do any kind of community outreach, is explain to pedestrians that, you know, they have to take some responsibility. And you hardly ever see a whole group of bicyclists standing around blocking the road. But I'll tell you, every single time you ride on there, you see a bunch of pedestrians. The folks are all talking and the kids are over here and the dog is over there and they are blocking the whole thing. So every time a cyclist has to ride there on the sidewalk, you have to stop, except today. Beautiful. There wasn't anybody there. It was awesome. Anyway. I think that would be the easiest first step. And if that doesn't work, then go for this whole big change thing, because I think the education process of getting people to use it is an uphill battle.
Great. Thank you.
Hi, I'm another one of those people that rides there every day. I just live a block off East Cliff. And I'm all for keeping it similar to what it is. The bike on the street going the same way it goes now. Have the bike lane actually have a bike lane on the sidewalk that's close to the street, say bike path. If pedestrians want to go wander over there, fine. You know, I think at least 50% who ride bicycles there on a regular basis probably ride a very old bike or a slow bike. So we're always watching out for pedestrians. Pedestrians don't watch out for bikes, not too much. I have a bell, you know, I've got the technique down. Pedestrians are always saying, oh, thank you. That was really nice how you did that. You know? Yeah, being in the street, even in the bike path on the street, I can tell you, I'm oftentimes have the big truck within inches. I'm oftentimes doing my bell to the big truck because he's looking at the surf and veering into me, okay? So you have, I would say 75% of all vehicles on East Cliff are big, okay? And 75% of them are tourists or surfers checking out what's in the water. They're not looking at the road. So being a bicyclist in front of a car, you gotta be kidding. You gotta be joking. Okay. My suggestion, put your new paint on, keep the bike lane as it is in the street. The double yellow is probably not going to do much good. Put the bike lane on the sidewalk next to the street, doesn't have to be so big. And that gravel, the dead zone that looks like, it's nowhere's land, utilize it. Pedestrians are all over it all the time. It's the closest to the water. It's used a lot. So use it. Put pedestrian all the way into the gravel. I don't call it gravel because it's pretty much pavement at this time point. Yeah, get rid of, as a bicyclist with an old bike, I don't like the fact that you took the bump out. Now I've got all kinds of rocks I have to navigate. Also, what was I say? E-bikes. Yeah, big problem with e-bikes. E-bikes are all over the place, all over the sidewalk, all over the street. I would have no motorized e-bikes or skateboards on the sidewalk. I would outlaw it if you want to protect the walkers and the bikers. Even being on the street, like today it's happened many times. I'll have the big truck here. I'm in my bike on the street and I have an e-bike going right between us at 20 miles an hour, taking off my elbow. So that's my idea, is utilize the gravel for
Okay.
pedestrians.
So you would prefer something like this design that's on the screen here with some kind of bike, I mean, at least some kind of bike striping closer to the
Yeah,
sidewalk,
and
right?
put your
And-
pedestrian on the gravel as well.
Yeah.
You know,
I
that
mean,
gravel doesn't have to
the
be
problem
a
why
no
that's actually
zone.
not really possible is really what I should say is gravel is standing. Right? I mean,
Oh.
if you think about it, it's sort of biking, walking, standing. The other
Yeah.
thing is you have a lot of pedestrians who just don't like walking on the gravel. I mean, you wouldn't believe it, but I hear complaints that the gravel gets in my shoes. I don't like walking on it. There are people,
Oh,
you know,
well,
with
gravel in shoes
wheelchairs,
is
et
better
cetera.
than
In any case,
bicyclists on the
Yeah.
pavement.
all right, thank you. I think the gentleman up here was next. Oh,
have
okay,
this in
you've
my
already
hand,
got a
so
mic.
I'll-
All right, we'll give you.
I don't know what the volume is for the listener, but just to continue the bicycle perspective, I know that no solution is going to please all people's issues,
Yeah.
but just to not repeat what's already been said, I've lived in other parts of the country and I've been biking for 40 years of my life. Most significant accidents or fatalities have occurred when we're telling bicyclists to go against traffic flow. And that should be a last resort. And I do feel that if the curbs and paintings were redone, that would inform the teenagers that are on the e-bikes. You can put symbols on the bike lane that say speed limit for bikes 10 miles an hour. Or bikers yield to pedestrians. You can inform these kids that are now 12 years old with their new Christmas toy and help them get more educated on what we need as users. There's multiple users there, different speeds, different volumes, different momentums. Bikes with cars in same direction is the safest for car drivers and bikers. Putting them in collision with each other is just asking for bigger issues we'll be discussing later, and it's not a discussion it's fun to have. And as far as the signage goes, I agree they get sticker covered within a week. Painting symbols on the sidewalk at a horizontal level will last longer and be more legible for all of them. But that's the summary of what I wanted to get across. I know the numbers came back with the percentages you shared, and that's great, but I'm curious how many of those voters were bikers or have bikers in their family, kids that will be bikers, friends that visit that want to borrow a bike. The population to vote might have been higher percentages, but they're not thinking forward to those who will be biking, and that's going to be a lot of the issues we don't want to be talking about. I'll stop there. I have the same sentiments they have. I've lived off the block off that street 14 years, been biking most of my life, and I've seen way too many close calls. I see it 3 times a week myself throughout town. There's a lot of potential to do this right. It's going to take time to educate those that are using it. Signage is number 1, consistency is number 2, and personal policing is number 3. We all have to tell the little kid to slow down. That's okay.
The transportation, public works addressed that issue of just the vehicles.
I'm sorry, what?
If the public works division, instead of addressing the vehicle part of it, addressed it with the bicycle, statistics, like he's been mentioning.
Well, can we come back to that question and dig into it a little bit more in a bit? I want to give this gentleman his turn to talk up here.
Hi, I like this proposal. My question is, so can they paint it tomorrow? We have other things that you've said, other plans that are in the future. How quickly can we get this implemented to give it a real good test with some sort of better signage, as everybody is talking about? I grew up here in Santa Cruz on 19th Avenue. I've been cycling that before it was the way it is. And I ride an e-bike now. And I kind of would like to see something said where there's two levels of e-bikes. There's the e-bikes that I ride and some of the people here ride. And then there's the ones that you showed the pictures of. Those are little motorcycles that they aren't really e-bikes in my mind. And those, I have seen more of those people riding those at high speeds, higher than the road needs to be. Of course, I'm old now. I ride about the same speed I did when I was younger, but I like the scenery. So I'm not going as fast as some of these other people on the e-bikes. I have to say that through the years, I've had minimal incidences of riding in the bike lane that we have up there today. Going would be southbound or westbound on the opposite direction of traffic. I've had minimal incidents. I slow down, people are there, ring the bell, or I say I'm coming up on your right or left, and they move out of the way. It's doable. I think that, as one of the other people said, is if we get the signage there and it's very visible and a lot of it. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
The diagram that you showed, is that the one
Can you
where,
Speak in the mic.
the diagram that you showed, is that the one, not this one, but that one where,
No, you're fine. No,
yes, that's when it's two ways of traffic. Well, we have that down by the arcade, by the boardwalk. Now, it works perfectly fine. Coming up from there, if you go over the bridge, if you go along the water, then you mix with traffic going around that curve. I've never had an issue. I ride an e-bike all the time, all over. I don't know. I mean, you'd have to figure those out, but I have no problem with change. And e-bikes are here to stay, whether we like them or not. It's how we change norms and mores and understanding of what isn't okay and what is okay. The other thing, with the double line, yellow line, why not? Someone mentioned, instead of a raise, maybe just grind it. So if a truck hits that grind, they're not lights, but so that they can feel that they're in the wrong lane. What's that? Yeah, something like that. And then this is just Pleasure Point E-Cliff, right? There's a whole bunch of these that we're not really talking about that that I have more issue with than down by Pleasure Point, where there is no sidewalk. And I looked it up, and I could be wrong, Manu, you tell me, or one of you guys. If there is no sidewalk, walkers are allowed in the bike lane as long as they walk against traffic, and bike riders have to give them the right of way. So I'd like to see more signage up there. Cars are driving like maniacs there, and so are the bike riders. And I love bike riding. So, but I think, we just have to figure out a solution and maybe lower it to 15 miles an hour on Pleasure Point Strip. What's the?
It's hard to ride a bike at 15 miles an hour.
Sure, you can do it.
A lot of people have a hard time with it.
Well, maybe take another approach, take another path. I'm just saying, you said compromise.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, these are solutions. I wouldn't rule out that the surveys meant little or nothing, why not try it? And, Santa Cruz is ideal for bike riding. We've got to figure out a way that works a little bit better, and staying in the same mindset. There's going to be more people. Look at all their polluting. We got to figure it out, and everyone has to compromise and may not get what we want. Anyways.
Thank you. Yeah, Linda?
Thank you. So what it's shown up here, says option D, but it's actually
Oh, whoops.
option E, right? That
Well,
we,
correct, sorry. I
that we
was,
vote. Okay, so I'm with the majority of people who voted to go to option E. And my question about that is, the design that you showed, the Public Works design, didn't show the lane markings for the car lane and the westbound bike lane. So I'm curious about that. And I'm curious about what will be added to the sidewalk or the walkway. I know there's all the signs are kind of destroyed at this point. Will it be keep right, or will it be pedestrians only, or anyway, there's kind of 3 different lanes here, and I'm curious about the other 2.
right. So, so westbound in this diagram is going left, right? And eastbound is going right. This is the car and bike lane as proposed in option E. So you can see there's a share for bikes to share with the cars in that direction. And then you can see that the bike lane has been striped for westbound travel here, as long with some green paint. The sidewalk really right now is just proposed is walk bike in this current diagram, some walk bike markings. But you know,
Oh.
we could certainly add something else or.
Okay, so the arrows on here are showing the bike and the arrows.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, that's what I didn't pick up.
That's a little cyclist diagram.
I mean, in the eastbound direction. So one other comment, I think the double yellow stripe will help with keeping people in the auto lane. So-
Mhm. Okay, thanks. I think this woman back here was next, and then we'll go to you, sir.
Thank you. I can get my whiny toddler out of here. Thank you so much for the opportunity to take comment. And I just want to build on some of the comments earlier, kind of cyclist oriented, but in support of how it is now, but with better striping and marking. And I think maybe a unique point that hasn't come up yet that maybe was missed in the way the survey was presented is that we're not trying to solve a transit problem. It's partially a transit problem, but it's mainly optimizing safety and use and access of a park, right? Like not that many people are using this part of East Cliff as a thoroughfare. They're either trying to access the beach, whether they're on foot, in vehicle, or on bike, or they're playing, right? They've got their kid on a Strider bike at Dirt Farm, and both the parents are on bikes. And so we can't just look at this as how do we solve for bike safety and bike car interaction the way that we would in other parts of the county. I think it's really critical to think about the number of people who are there just to be there or to access the beach. And for me, that context really suggests sticking with how it is now, but with much updated, better signage, and not over engineering in the ways that the survey responses showed were more popular. I think because we're fundamentally not changing why people are there and how they're moving through that space. And I think that's unique as compared to other transit bike traffic solves.
So could you just, what in your mind would be better signage or striping sort of, but with the current design? Would it be some kind of?
Yeah, I think paint on
stencil?
the ground. I also think some additional curb cuts could be really helpful to ease the flow of bikes in and out. But I think signs up here and signs on the ground, just putting the paint back. And I'm very much in agreement that there's a level of just education and self-awareness, and signage is the first step to that. But I think how it's intended to be used, but with the paint back on the ground is a really good first step.
Okay, thank you. I think the gentleman here, and then Patty.
So I think that the two top things we're looking at, keeping it the same and also the other one are probably the best. But I actually think that the real problem is speed in general. E-bikes, they're here. I live on East Cliff Drive. I've lived on East Cliff Drive 40 years now. And most bike riders don't go that fast on East Cliff Drive. And it's the e-bikes and the cars. I mean, the CHP hangs out right there at like the Radio Towers Beach, the slope down to the Radio Tower Beach. They give tickets there. I always wish, I mean, most cars, I would say half the cars speed on East Cliff, right? I'd be over 25. So I like the idea of slowing down East Cliff no matter what the solution is. So speed is the problem with both cars and the e-bikes. And it's the kids who are underage on the e-bikes. I see it every day. It's crazy. And they're going to hurt somebody eventually. So again, thank you very much. That was on open, but yeah, they're going to hurt themselves too. But yeah, still hurt. So I'm tending, having listened to everybody, I was kind of on the fence. I'm for just keeping it the way it is, more items on the ground, slower East Cliff in general, signs on the ground that say like, share or pedestrians keep right and slow down. Like I think can we make a bike speed limit that would be something reasonable, like 10 or 15? I don't see a lot of people speeding on their bikes. I really don't. So, it's the
Pedestrians keep right.
yeah. I don't know what I don't know what to put down. I'm just trying to think what you put on the ground. Slow down is the most important thing. Traffic.
Yeah, could you address a couple of things that have come up,
Yeah.
Steve? So the idea of, if you could, of like a bike speed limit or putting like a Shero on the sidewalk or something along those two issues?
Sure. Just as far as a bike speed limit goes, I think the practicality of that is questionable because most people don't have a speedometer on their bikes. That's just not. Now I get with the e-bikes have them, but just to kind of explain a little bit of the concept of what I've been studying this issue for several years now. When we went to Europe last year and we saw how they do it in the Netherlands, which is definitely one of the most advanced biking countries in the world. I'm not trying to say we should do everything like them, but their philosophy is that they have a hierarchy of incident severity, and in their mind, the bicyclist should be the primary thing that you look at for safety first, because when you fall off a bike, you have very little protection and you're going probably at least 10 miles. It's hard to ride a bike 5 miles an hour. We all know that, right? It's hard to keep them upright. Get into the 6, 8, 10 miles an hour. Now you're rolling along and you've got good balance. But if you fall off a bike going 10 miles an hour, chances are you're going to get really hurt. A pedestrian on the other side, if you just fall, just standing, or you're walking, pedestrians walk 2 miles an hour, 1, 2, 3 miles an hour, right? So when a pedestrian falls, not always, but it tends to be less severe than when a bicyclist falls. And then of course, we all understand that if you're in a motor vehicle, you have the most protection. So the hierarchy that they use, bicycles first, pedestrians second, cars third. And that's the way they rank the hierarchy of safety on their roadways. They never mix bikes and cars unless they can get the speed limit down to below 20 miles an hour, as Manu said, but they also try to make the roads very, very uncomfortable to even drive that speed. And there's a cultural shift where, and as Manu explained, that you really want to make an area like this. And I think East Cliff is the perfect roadway for this. It's a one-way road. We want people, it shouldn't be a commute route. We know that, and it's been said here, that most everybody there is for recreational purposes, right? You're not commuting, trying to get as fast as you can across town. If you're commuting in a car on East Cliff in the Parkway, that's not the right road to take, right? So really you should be driving 5 to 10 miles an hour, and you should be yielding and stopping for all bicycles and pedestrians. You should not be parking and honking at people or any of that kind of stuff. And so the concept here is to give bikes their own space away from pedestrians. Bicycle and pedestrian collisions can be actually really, really bad for both bikes and pedestrians. And if cars are going very slow, it's really easy to react to either pedestrians or bicycles. And so that's the concept. So was there something else to address besides the bicycle speed limit?
Yeah, I mean, the bicycle speed limit, if you could address that.
Yeah, it's just, I don't think that's really
right? Because people they don't know how fast they're going on a bike, and pedestrians, they do stop often and want to say.
Sorry, I think you turned off the mic with your thumb. Just push it again.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay. So
They have roads in the Netherlands where they actually have very narrow one-way roads where they allow bikes to go both directions. Cars can only go one direction, but bikes can share the road going both directions. And again, when you're driving a car, it's really uncomfortable. You kind of have to creep along in those situations. So happy to answer any other questions.
One other
Yeah.
design point that was brought up was the idea of putting sharrows like kind of on the walkway as opposed to like a full bike lane, trying to at least tell if we did continue to have a mixed use facility, tell folks at least that bikers can be there. Is that an option in your mind? Yes.
I mean, and they're sharing it with now pedestrians. They're sharing the bike path with pedestrians, but to know, and yeah, I mean, that's technically that symbol that we use is for in the roadway with motor vehicles. And so it's not really applicable, but you know, we can paint a little bit on the walkway because it's a multi-use path. We can kind of, go ahead.
Well,
Do you want to get a microphone?
No, I just, we are not another, yeah.
Oh, of course. Yeah,
sure.
of course.
Sure.
This is so this is, no, of course, I totally understand, but this is, we're talking about one segment of Broadway between.
Right.
Can I be a,
Yeah, okay, let's just continue. Well, yeah, well, it could. Thank you, ma'am. I'm happy to give you time, your time. Yeah, go
can
ahead.
I be a wet blanket, please?
Go ahead.
First of all, it is a commute lane at various times of the day. It is a narrow road. 12 feet is in some places and in other places it's narrower than that. There are cars that are on the right and left-hand side that park diagonally that come out. There are people in there. We're talking here, we're talking like it's utopia, but really often it's chaos. And I think that if it's going to be addressed, the whole area from 32nd to 41st should be reassessed. And if you have to go to the Coastal Commission, get rid of the gravel side, make it asphalt so that there's more pedestrian safety. I think there are more pedestrians than bikes and more cars than bikes often during the day. And on weekends with surf contests, etc., it's filled with people. So I think that to be realistic, it should not be done piecemeal because it's a huge cost. And like Portola was done at a cost, it had to be redone and taken out. And I would really hope that that would not happen for East Cliff because those of us that live in the neighborhood already deal with it. We appreciate it, but we don't want it worse.
Great, thank you. Who was next? I think do Wayne here and then Will over there.
I'm at the wrong meeting, of course. I live on 21st. But I mean, everything I said is there or worse as this lady over here said, you know, and I feel like I'm being left out. But that isn't, I want to add something to this stuff, to what's going on here. And it's e-bikes. And I mean, I agree with everything as far as dangers, but we're getting so many because people can't park. I mean, we're worse in, you know, that's the beach. People come to be on the beach the whole day. Not only tourists, but people in Santa Cruz. Well, the people in Santa Cruz are starting to ride e-bikes. The e-bikes on 20th were 5 and 6 feet deep. They had the whole place covered. You could hardly get to the stairway. You couldn't get the thing. I think you need to also realize that you need to start accounting for where they're going to park all these e-bikes for the people to come to watch the ocean or whatever they're going to do. And I don't see that here. And it is getting, I mean, it's already there. It was there this Sunday.
All right, well, look at bike parking as a factor as well. Thanks. Yeah, Will?
I live in Pleasure Point. I've driven East Cliff. I've walked East Cliff. I've ridden East Cliff, and I've done it hundreds of times. I'm extremely familiar with the area. Multi-use paths simply don't work. They aren't safe for bike riders. That's for sure. I know that because I've fallen very specifically because I was on a multi-use path and a dog walked out in front of me. Wasn't anybody's fault. Wasn't my fault. Wasn't the dog's fault. We were both just there, and I was going slowly at the time. And yeah, I hurt myself. Contraflow works. I've ridden contraflow plenty of times. There's no problem with it at all. You're looking straight at the cars that are coming towards you. You catch their eye. You can see them. They can see you. It's a lot better than having coming up behind you. It's also only, even right now, really 15 miles an hour. It's not a fast road. Most people are actually driving about 50 miles an hour. Sometimes I pass cars, you know, just pedaling along beside them. So it's not like it's a fast road in any case. And riding in the middle of the road is not a big deal from a bike rider point of view, especially when you're going 15 miles an hour. You've got somebody behind you. They see you completely. They're not trying to pass you because they can't pass you. I regularly ride in the middle of the road because of that, because the roads in general don't have bike lanes that are large enough. In terms of the asphalt versus gravel, I don't think that any change there can work unless it was all asphalt. The surfers don't like to walk on the gravel. Dogs don't like walking on the gravel. People who are pushing strollers don't like using the gravel. So I could imagine changing that back to all asphalt, but I've heard that the gravel has to be gravel because it's something to do with the Coastal Commission. That's it. Thanks.
Thanks. Well, I'll just address the gravel issue quickly. It was part of our original permit from Coastal to have the gravel there. It's part of like stormwater recharge and, you know, preventing runoff, et cetera, from the road. And it would be a little bit more costly to actually go through and replace with asphalt. So that's why we didn't look at that as a near-term fix. But yeah, go ahead.
So I'm for the contraflow as well, and I must quite a bit rock also. But I do think.
Sorry, we just double check that the mic's on. It might have.
So I'm saying I am for the contraflow. This is the option E, right, Son?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah. I agree. I don't think it's a problem. I've been in situations. I feel comfortable doing it. Maybe I'm an exception or whatever. But I guess the question I have is, what are the cost estimate differences? Because I'm assuming this is quite a bit more expensive, like by 3, by.
You're saying then doing just repainting
No,
the.
I'm saying the contraflow, I think it's E option, right?
Right. You mean
Is the
compared?
most expensive compared to what? Which is the idea of repainting what it already is now.
Yeah. Do you have any sense of the estimate of just the cost for repainting?
Versus what we're doing here.
Yeah, suggested here.
It's
That much more than just repainting.
well, with all the green and the double yellow, it's, you know, yeah, it's, I mean, just replenishing what we have there, it's probably be a third of the cost actually of what, because we're putting all the new sharrows, we're putting all new, the green. Green is very expensive, by the way, the green, because it's per square foot. It's especially if you go permanent. So I think actually replenishing the existing paint that's out there, if we just went and just painted over it, it's probably a third of the cost of what this is.
So
We a lot more new stuff.
Doing the contraflows will cost about $85,000 and repainting everything $28,000.
So it's not a huge amount of money either way, it seems to me. Right? So I began to think, well, if this is a lot more, what about the idea of trying it out now by establishing a painted west flow on the asphalt, right? Because it's cheaper, why not try it and see if that works? If it doesn't work, then move to this. But now that I hear it's only $85,000 for the contraflow, I would suggest we do that and try that. If that doesn't work, then you can track it, move it back.
Yeah, yes, yeah.
85, it just doesn't seem like it's that much money, that expensive. And I do think maintaining as wide as possible, whether it's all pavement or somewhat gravel, whatever, is really a desirable feature for a wide range of efforts of standing, enjoying the scenery, loading up your surfboard, pulling your bike over. It just seems the wider that's a good width to have for pedestrian only.
Right.
Would be my preference. And that's why my main reason for arguing for the contraflow here.
All right, thank you. Paige is next, and then we'll go to Jason online after that.
Hi, thank you. Hi. So I actually don't have a strong opinion on this because I tend to not have opinions on things that I don't know enough about, and I don't ride my bike a lot on the street. But I'm just have a question for you, Manu, because I find it really interesting and fascinating that a lot of people in this room that do use it a lot have such strong different opinions about what is most safe versus contraflow in the traffic versus like mixed use on the sidewalk. And I have to imagine there are people that study this for a living that probably have a more like definitive answer on that. And have you looked into that at all? Like asked a consultant, like what is the most safe?
Well, Greg, do you want to weigh in on
Well,
this?
I know we went to the Netherlands, but that's not what I'm talking about.
This is technically Greg's job. So he's our traffic safety engineer for the
Okay.
county. And
Well, I think there's, when this was first developed, there were some concessions made regarding safety in terms of like, ideally, we would never have what we have out there currently. And so I think that was the best effort at the time. And now we're looking at alternatives because of what's being experienced out there. The option E is not typical. So it would be, that's why it would be like a pilot and somewhat experimental. So we'd have to see how it goes. There's obviously, people talked about the risk of oncoming bicyclists and vehicles. And yeah, we share those concerns. We're guided by Vision Zero, which is like a plan, I think. From Denmark or something originally. We don't want serious or injuries or any fatals. So that's our biggest concern with whatever we do, is we don't want to increase that at all. That'd be horrible, right? So I think there's the original design. That was, as I said, I'd say that was the best at that time. And whether this will work or not, I think we're not sure. And so that's
Well,
why it's proposed as next kind of a pilot project.
Thank you. So I think you answered my question, and the answer is no. Because what would be interesting to try to find out is just some numbers and stats, and ask someone like, what is, not even in this situation, but just what is more safe, contraflow in a driveway or shared space on a sidewalk? Like, when do we get more accidents? When do we get more fatalities? And then that's sort of the answer, in my opinion. And then I just wanted to say just real quick that I hadn't thought of it before, but I just wanted to push back a little bit because I thought the idea of adding a speed limit on the ground was a great idea. I hadn't thought of that. If you decide to keep things the same, in your comment that it wouldn't be practical, I hear what you're saying. But for me, even though I'm not a biker, if I was riding my bike and I saw that, I wouldn't be like, oh no, I'm not going to listen to it because I don't know what 10 miles an hour it is. It would be more for me a sign to say, slow your ass down. I think that would maybe be the point. It's just kind of a cue to say, you need to slow it down, girl. So slow it down, girl. Slow your ass down, Paige. I need that in my head all the time. Thank you.
Great, Greg. So, I mean, I understand that this configuration is pretty atypical, but I mean, to the point of, well, this is a fairly standard contraflow lane proposal here, right? I mean, so contraflow versus mixed use, is there like, does one have more safety benefits than the other?
There's the specific issue here is complicated because of all those driveways and intersections on the one side, which is, that's one of the reasons to consider putting it on the other side with option E. So that's what there's like theory, and then there's the nuances of reality. And I think what's being attempted here is to work with those nuances to kind of custom fit an ideal solution. I mean, that's really the effort.
Thank you.
I just want to add one more point too, because I think it's been mentioned, or at least asked, what's the safest thing to do? The safest thing to do is to separate each mode and give them their own space. Okay, so that would be the best. If we could have a dual bike lane on its own, have enough room for pedestrians on their own, and have enough room for motorists on their own, that would by far be the best, regardless if it's contraflow or not. You give each mode its own spot. Well, and as Manu articulated at the beginning of the meeting, we don't have room to do that on the mixed use path. There's just not enough room to give bikes their own class 1 facility. That's like 8 feet, right? 4 feet in each direction. And have enough room for all the peds out there and keep all the peds off that nice asphalt path that they all really want to walk on. We know we'll, yeah. And so, but we can't do that here, right? So the next thing is how do we mix modes? Which modes do we mix? Right now, we're mixing bikes and pedestrians. That's not necessarily actually really that safe. And you think, well, oh, it's way safer to put bikes and pedestrians in the same space together than it is to put bikes and cars. That's not necessarily true if you can calm the traffic and keep car speeds low, in which they already are. And I think folks who live out there, it's hard to drive 30 miles an hour on that road. It's hard to drive 25. Most people are probably driving 15. And if we can calm them down, well, you guys know you're out there. One of the things we're going to do as part of this is, as we go forward, to lower the speed limits to 20, we're going to go out there and do speed surveys. And it's one of the things that we haven't quite fully vetted, but we'll go out there with radar guns and we will actually take scientific speed surveys at different spots along East Cliff to see what are people actually traveling at today. And then we can start to make some decisions about like what's the average driver, what's their average speed there and where are spots that they're speeding and where are the spots that they're slowing down. So that's something we'll take a look at. Because absolutely to mix bikes and cars like we're showing in this option, we want to get car speeds down and we want to make bikes the preferred mode on this road and not cars. Yeah, absolutely. That's the concept here. The concept here is to have bikes be the top of the food chain when it comes to hierarchy within the road. And
can you, sorry, your mic turned off. If you want to keep going, that's fine.
That's fine.
All right. Wait, hold.
It's a ship.
I want to go to Jason, who's been very patient online to ask a question. Then we can come back for kind of second round comments here in person.
Hi there. I really appreciate the option to do this remotely and to just have this venue for feedback in general. So thank you to Manu and his team for putting this together. I want to start by even before we dive into the solutions, it's important to recognize when the survey came out and then in tonight's introduction, Manu, you said this is all anecdotal stories and the data don't support the problems that those anecdotes outline. And then there was this, I'll admit it was a tangent about e-bikes. It never quite connected to this space. I think nearly everyone will agree that there is a growing issue about e-bikes, but that is much broader than this stretch of road. It is not going to be solved in this road. So let's try to set that aside. That is a bigger problem that needs a bigger solution. We can go on and on, griping about the middle schoolers and their e-bikes. That's not going to get us anywhere in finding a solution here. So without data supporting things, we really don't have a clearly defined problem. So how are we going to pick a solution for that? And I think if you look at the response rate to the survey, you will see how very few people weighed in. And I think that a big reason for that could be that they don't see a reason to change, or they don't have enough information about what the problem is they're trying to solve. And so I think when it can be very misleading to only rank and put percentages next to each option and how people voted on those. You also need to put the percentage of people that did not respond to get a more clear picture of the residents here. Now, specifically on the two higher options, option D and E, I see a big issue putting the bikes and the cars in that same lane, because you are going to have cars they can be going slow, but they are also going to be distracted. They're going to be looking at the surf. They're going to be looking for their friends. They may even stop and talk to their friends. They're going to have frustrated bikers trying to get around them, and vice versa. You're going to have bikes doing the same distracted, slow go, and you're going to have cars getting very frustrated trying to get around them. I think that is it. And then they're going to do all kinds of things that they shouldn't do, like cross a yellow line, even though they're not supposed to. They're going to do that, and that's going to create a very dangerous situation. So I think I support looking at other areas that have tried similar things like this, but you also need to take into account, do those areas have this beautiful ocean on one side that are distracting everyone? Do they have their friends that they're looking for, wanting to catch up on? It's a very crowded area, and I think we need to accept that. And I think that the two, the option D and E create new problems, even if they're giving these other bikers a lane that they don't currently have. You're creating issues for other people. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Jason. Okay, I think, yeah.
I agree with the online comments that were just made quite a bit. I am concerned with being on a bike in the same lane with the cars. I also wonder, you had mentioned that you might do additional survey prior to making any changes. And I would say that you need to also be really careful when you label a survey. So D and E say fully separated bike and pedestrian areas. And as a pedestrian on that zone, I would be like, yes, I want that. But if you had labeled it bikes with cars, you might have gotten a different response or a different kind of, different responses to the question. So I think those labels need to be looked at a little bit. Option B was labeled as adding a bike lane, but really that is where the bikes go when they're headed towards the hook from the headed towards the point from the hook. They are to go on the pedestrian area and share it. And so that's not necessarily really adding a bike lane, although better labeling of it would be very helpful. And I guess my other final comment is if we did try a trial with E, probably because D again is problematic for all of the roads and parking off onto the left side. Maybe 15 miles an hour, and then that could be for bikes and cars, and you wouldn't necessarily even need to differentiate whether it's a bike speed or a car speed, but that's also slow enough for the cars so that then a bike that's going 10 or 11 or 8 might not be holding it back quite as much if the speed limit is only 15. So I would look at trying to maybe even reduce that further from 20 or from current 25.
Great, thank you. If you haven't had a chance to speak, we're going to give you a preference. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
A lot of people here are really passionate about the bike safety side, but I'm someone that's more of a pedestrian side on East Cliff. And when I got the survey, I was absolutely on the side of keeping all of the bikes off of the sidewalk. I have had an experience with my dog, like this gentleman who has jumped out in front of a biker. And I just think that the bikes should be off the sidewalk completely. You mentioned earlier in the slideshow that we passed a law last year that all e-bikes need to be off the sidewalk. So I don't understand why we're considering having them be commingling here on the pedestrian walkway in this situation. So that's my side of it.
Thank you. Yeah, this gentleman in the back.
Yeah, I think I'm going to also represent pedestrians. We live on East Cliff near 26, where there is not a sidewalk or any space, basically 3 feet for a troop of bicyclists, 10, 20, on their Saturday morning ride, it's cruising down there. And my wife and I do a walk to the point 5-6 days a week. And so we're really familiar with that potential catastrophe of a bicyclist and pedestrian.
Just hold the mic.
And
here.
I want to say that the fellow that visited the Netherlands had some good points, but he didn't mention that happens to the pedestrian mixed with the bicyclist. That's a dangerous situation when they get hit, even if they're only going 15 miles an hour. The car and the cyclist are a challenge, but the cyclist and the pedestrian also are a challenge. So as a pedestrian, I like the option D, fully separated as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, I think if everyone's had a chance to make at least one comment, happy to circle back for other comments or questions. I think Karin here was jumping up and down, and then we can come up here to the front. Thanks.
I just was wondering what your criteria was for evaluating the new plan if you do go through with it, because currently the data says it's anecdotal. We don't have any statistics. So I guess that means somebody has to get seriously hurt with a new system before it can be said not to be successful. People can get scared. They can have incredible close calls with cars. There's no criteria.
Well, so I mean, most of the bike ped conflicts that we're seeing today, it's true, we don't have traffic data for, but we certainly would for car bike accidents under option E or D or some new design that mix bikes and cars. Anything else that either Greg or Steve want to add to that?
That's probably right. I mean, we'll have a baseline of the chosen data we have through the CHP, which is mostly collisions
involving cars. So, but that'd be our baseline, and we'd be able to analyze if anything changed.
Other questions? This gentleman here.
The question I have is, everything that we've been discussing tonight, the curb stays the same. So one of the meetings we had quite a while ago, I had brought up about moving the curb in towards the ocean more. So then it gave enough room possibly for all of the pedestrians, and it gave 2 lanes for bicycles to go into by moving it. I understand it's a large expense, but is that something that we could look at, as I said before, in the future? Is right now do the striping that we want, that we've talked about here, where we just upgrade all the striping that's there, then eventually move the curb over. There's the separation from the bicycles and the pedestrians.
I mean, anything's possible with enough money and enough time.
Yeah, I understand that.
Moving the curb would probably be a multi-million-dollar project.
Yeah, you'd probably do the option you have on there. I think it was a B that had the bike lane on the at grade head pass.
Like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then move the curb over.
Right, but I mean, you could do this without moving.
Or
the curb.
this,
In essence,
yeah.
it'd be the same thing.
Yes, in essence, but then if you move the curb, then you separate the 2.
You grade separated them, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other comments here in the audience? Live audience, anyone online? Okay, well, thank you everyone for coming tonight. We really appreciate your feedback. I'm sorry we're not making any decisions tonight. So there's no grand conclusion to this meeting. Other than we really appreciate all the feedback and how much you all care about East Cliff. And so we'll continue to work on this issue and absolutely share any next steps with everyone. Thank you.